So I'm just doing this quick live stream to give my reaction to the two cabinet resignations today, and it's from David Davis, the Brexit Secretary, and Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary. And this is really a massive, massive disaster for Theresa May. And we're going to explain like the whole history behind it and why this is such a big deal in a sec. But I'm going to get people's reactions. So I'm going to talk about Jeremy Corbyn right now, who gave his reaction in the comments today, and he said, "Mr. Speaker, this mess is all the Prime Minister's own making. For too long, she has spent more time negotiating divisions in her party than putting any focus on the needs of our economy. The team the Prime Minister appointed to secure this deal for our country have jumped the sinking ship. Far from strong and stable, there are ministers overboard and the ship is listing, all at the worst possible time." So what he's on about there is, the strong and stable government that Theresa May promised us in the election last year and everything like that. But he really hits home what is really happening in the Tory party at the moment, which is the Conservative Party, might know that by another name, is basically Theresa May was sort of, I guess it's a compromise appointment. So when David Cameron resigned after the Brexit vote, she was put in. She voted Remain, but she kept pretty quiet for the whole campaign. So I think what she was really doing was she's biding her time thinking something could happen to Cameron. So she became a prime minister. And then a year ago, she called an election where the Tories lost their majority. And this upset a lot of people in her party, obviously, but also the dynamics of the cabinet are there are people who voted Remain and people who voted Leave. But Boris Johnson is the main person to focus on here. Boris Johnson is pretty much one of the most prominent figures in UK politics. He is really loathed by a lot of liberals and people like myself. But he is, he was the mayor of London for a long time and people really liked what he did. The Boris bikes and everything. He was quite popular and even his antics were quite popular with the public. But what he represents is the face of the Leave campaign being in the government, really. And what people speculate and what I speculate myself is he's resigned because he doesn't like the way Brexit's going. She hasn't put enough emphasis on what the Leave voters want. And Boris Johnson, obviously, to obviously a lot of people, he wants to become Prime Minister one day. So he's leaving now to jump, what as Jeremy Corbyn said right there, to jump the sinking ship. And I think what's going to happen, I was saying yesterday after the Davis resignation, is that I think there's going to be another Tory leadership contest. And I think Boris Johnson is going to be the next Prime Minister. I don't know when it's going to happen, or it's going to happen before Brexit or afterwards, but I definitely think it's going to happen. I always thought it's going to happen. So I'm going to give a bit more of the reaction to what's happened today. It's quite funny. So apparently, someone said, "I am told Downing Street spiked Boris Johnson. That is, they announced he was quitting before he actually finished writing his resignation letter. This is getting very brutal." So, typical Tory infighting. If some of you aren't aware, the Tories are really infamous for stabbing each other in the back. You only have to look at Margaret Thatcher's downfall, one of the most popular Conservative prime ministers of all time, and they all stabbed her in the back right at the end. And then someone else, Zach Goldsmith, who's an MP for, I think, Richmond Park, he's Conservative, he said, "Boris could have literally thrown himself in front of a bus to save a child, and his opponents would still accuse him of being opportunistic. He never have wanted to resign from one of the great offices of state. That he did so shows how much he cares about respecting the referendum." I think that's way too nice, because I do agree that Boris Johnson wouldn't resign. He loves Winston Churchill, he loves the foreign policy stuff. I don't think he would resign lightly, but at the same time, I think he's got one eye on, being the Prime Minister, so I don't think he really minds. And yeah, Brexit is such a disaster at the moment. I think it's a good political move for most of these people, like Jeremy Corbyn said, to jump ship. And one more tweet from an actor I like. He's the son of Dame Maggie Smith, and he's also plays Captain Flint in Black Sails. He said, "God, the Tories are fucking useless. They got us into Brexit shitstorm, and they have no idea how to get us out of it. What an unmitigated mess this country is in. Pity we lack a decent opposition. Up shit creek. Hashtag Brexit shambles, hashtag Brexit." So what he's saying there is basically the opposition to the Tories is so weak because basically Jeremy Corbyn is actually anti-EU, and it was really hard to get him to campaign to Remain. And a lot of what he said is really against what his voters want. I think he said he didn't want to stay in the single market and everything like this. And that makes it hard to get united front against the Tories. And this is why I think maybe they can stay in power, even though they're so incompetent, is because we can't get united opposition. So you have the Lib Dems and half of Labour supporting, these liberal policies, supporting Remain. And then you have Jeremy Corbyn and the Marxists and the Socialists who kind of want to leave the EU anyway because they hate it. They see it as like a bourgeoisie club, a club for just corporations to spread themselves, get tax breaks and everything like that. And if you're a real socialist, a proper socialist, you would be against the EU. So I don't really care that he's against the EU, even if I like him. He's staying true to his beliefs. And if people don't like that, you've just been projecting your own beliefs onto Jeremy Corbyn. But he does make a good point there that you need a united opposition to get the Tories out, and it is really, really frustrating. So what I think is going to happen in the next couple of days, it's obviously a massive disaster, for Theresa May. I don't think she's going to hang on any longer. And, all these Brexiteers who are quite prominent, like Jacob Rees-Mogg, even though that's pretty much a meme, to be honest, he is quite popular, and so is Boris Johnson, and so is David Davis. I wouldn't be surprised if there's another Tory leadership contest in the next year, to be honest. Unfortunately, was going to go last year after the disaster that was the 2017 election, and I don't really know how she can hang on now. Just she's having all these meetings. We're meant to leave the EU in March 2019, and what's happened here is to completely undermine it. Because for those of you who are not English, like your own Secretary of State, Foreign Secretary is the third most important post in the country. I know Secretary of State in the US is seen as the second most, but you have the Prime Minister, the Chancellor, and then you have the Foreign Secretary. And, the Brexit Secretary, them together, that's, part of our negotiating team. And I'm not sad to see Boris Johnson go. I'm pretty happy. He likes Trump and everything. I hate Boris Johnson at the moment. But, it is still a disaster for Theresa May. And someone did write a funny tweet on Twitter, said, what a week it could be. England could win the World Cup and a Tory government could implode. So that is a good thing. If you don't like these people, it is a good thing. But the only bad thing is what they could replace them is worse, and the direction they could go is worse. So Vince Cable, who's the leader of the Liberal Democrats, said to Theresa May, now you've got the right-wing Brexiteers out of your cabinet, focus on what most of the country want. We want good ties with the EU, even if we leave the EU. So that's what we should do, not pander to the right wing, who are really not even that prominent. It's like half the Conservative Party. Then you have the rest of the Commons and the rest of the parties all want closer ties to the EU. So why is she pandering to one group? And it's clear why she's pandering to one group, because if she doesn't do what they want or she doesn't compromise with them, she's gone. Her leadership is ended because they're all going to vote her out, and we're going to have a leadership contest again. And that's the only reason Theresa May isn't going into the more liberal direction. And that's why it's so, so frustrating. And that's really all I wanted to say about all this. It is a really big day for UK politics. I just wanted to get a quick video out there. I know a lot of you are American, people who watch my videos, and maybe some of you wondering where I've been the last couple of weeks. I haven't uploaded much. I got two really good videos coming in. I'm going to hopefully go to the Donald Trump protest on Friday and record some of that, and hopefully interview some people on both sides. That might be pretty cool. And I also got a really, really interesting interview with someone where I won't spoil now. I'm just in the process of writing the script and recording everything, so that hopefully I'll get that out in the next 2 weeks. And yeah, that's pretty much everything. I think it's nice to do a video once in a while, a live stream. And if you're watching this later, just let me know what you think in the comments. The UK government is pretty fucked at the moment. Our country is quite fucked, but yeah, that's pretty much everything. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. And if you've watched it, thank you for watching.